Well, hello and welcome to today's webinar, Mastering LiDAR and Aerial Survey Data. Today we're going to show you how you can build your own data management and delivery system using the Coordinates Cloud platform. You'll see how to configure aerial imagery and point cloud via a branded portal, how to visualize LAS data and seamlessly extract or stream orthos, 3D tiles and GIS vectors into Esri and other platforms. I'm going to first run through an overview of coordinates, and then Eli Chadwick, our sales engineer, will run this live webinar. Hey, Eli. Emphasis on the live. We like to live dangerously and do all of our webinars live, so that's always a fun time. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you should see at the bottom of your screen a Q&A button. Please jump in there and let us know what you're thinking, and we will try to answer any questions that we can. Anything we can't, we'll take offline and follow up with you afterwards. Also, this webinar is being recorded right now, and we will send you out a copy for everyone who registered next week sometime. So let's kick this off. First of all, with Coordinates, you get your own data platform. So that means as a customer, you would have your own site. And the idea is that your users can then access your data through your own branded portal. So self-service means that people can come along and take the data in the formats and the coordinate system that they need. So they might choose GIS formats, they might choose PDFs, or even DWG for CAD, which is good for the engineers and architects out there. The automatic coordinate transformation is all done in the browser, so you don't have to do any of that preparation for your data. APIs are also automatically created. So when you load up a data set, this little box will appear and people can stream your data into their apps as well. Coordinates is in the cloud, so that means you don't actually need to install anything. You can just get going with your browser as is. And we are scalable and performant. So we can support up to 20 gigabytes in size for just one vector layer. And same, we can do up to 2 terabytes or 2 terabytes plus for a single raster and point cloud layer. So if you have large data sets out there, we can definitely help you with that. We are secure, so we are ISO 27001 certified. So we take care of your data security at the back end. Then you have control over who has permissions to your data sets in the front end. That means if you want a data set to be public and open to everybody and you really want to promote it, you can do that. Or you can have a private group if you have some sensitive data that you just want to keep to your team or one client. So here's an overview of how it works. Basically, you have a whole bunch of data. You can load it into your coordinate site here. You can do that automatically with an ETL tool like FME or APIs, or you can use your data management web app, and that's a lot of what Eli will show you today. Then your customers, no matter who they are, can then access it in all these different ways. So your managers might want PDFs, your devs might want APIs, and your CAD users and GIS professionals will have their favorite formats. So we're really about getting great data management and great client delivery. Cool, so I will stop there and hand over to Eli so that he can take you on a tour through today's stuff.
All right. So yeah, I'm going to basically give you a visual version of Anne's descriptive stuff at the beginning there. I'm going to go through, I've got a couple of websites set up here. They are examples of what a portal would look like if you took out a business plan with coordinates. I'm going to go through this guy here, GGC first. It's got more data types in it, and I can just show you a bit about how the UI hangs together. And then after that, we'll jump over to this guy, which is a more aerial survey oriented site, just to give you an idea of what that might look like. So back to GGC, what are we looking at here? You get your own URL, you get your own branding, so you can control what color this is, you can load up your own icons, you can configure this drop down to reference back to say your corporate site. From a navigation perspective, across the top I have 3 buttons. Data turns on and off this data browser. This is where you discover the data sets that you want to interact with as an end user, and map is going to turn the map on and off. You can have a number of maps. They'll pop up along your map bar down the bottom here. So if I just cruise to a data set, open it up, this is what we call a data card. It essentially is designed to give the user as much information as they need to do an appraisal of the data set. Is this the one that I want? And in here, we have a bunch of about information. Should stress that all of this is published, is controlled by the publisher. So when you import a data set, you get to set all of these things down here. Licensing, we support Creative Commons out of the box. Details, what is the data set? How many features are there? What type is it? CRS as stored, we load the data in the CRS that you have the data in when you do your import. So you determine what its stored CRS is. When the end user wants to pull the data down, i.e. do an export, they can reproject into whatever makes sense for their mission. A bit about history and version control, and then a sample of what is actually in the data set. So again, is this the data set I want to use before I download potentially a very large data set? Under history, each time the data set gets updated, we build what are called change sets. This is just a one-time load, so there is only one. And then under services and APIs, this is all of the different API methods for interacting with the data set. So down on the left here, these are all the different types. They will vary according to the data type that you're looking at the time. So this is a vector data set. All our data sets have WFS, WMTS. If you have created a style, then you have generated tiles. The way it works is you can come down here under Manage API Keys, create a new API key. It will be associated with your user, so it'll have access whatever your user has. You can go data access only, or you can go more manual scope. Everything I'm doing here is API first, i.e. front end calling the back end via APIs, and all of the things that I'm doing are automatable. A lot of these guys down here are actually admin things, so you can automate the loading of a data set, the onboarding of users, stuff like that. We won't be doing much of that today. We're mainly just consuming data. But essentially, you can pick your API key from here, and that will plug it into the URL. Grab a copy of the URL, paste that into ArcPro, QGIS, AGOL, whatever you're doing, and that gives you a direct API connection to the data set. Spatial Query API, a lot of our users use us as a server of data. They build applications on top and access via various APIs. This one here is for doing simple lat-long queries. Cart, I won't be going into at all, really, but it's a wrapper around Git, and it opens up all of that Git functionality, like branching, pushing branches around, merging, things like that. And then finally, Esri REST services. Every vector layer that you store in coordinates will have an Esri REST service generated off it. Again, grab a copy of the URL, drop that into a browser, and you have yourself a feature service. So you can plug that into any of the Esri type things. One of the fundamental things you'll be doing is adding data to a map. Add it to the map. Once you've got the data in the map, you can add a number of different layers of different data types. Once you're in the map, there are a bunch of things you can do in here. So say you wanted to cruise into Taranaki, swap it into 3D mode. That basically is 2D data draped across a 3D terrain. But in here, you can do things like simple queries of the different features that are in there. You can also say, I want to have a look at the data table. So the idea here is a ton of users don't have much GIS proficiency, yet they still need to be able to interact with GIS data. This gives them the ability to do it all in platform without ever having to know what ArcPro is or what QGIS is. If they are a more advanced type user, they can come over here to export. From the export flow, there's a few things you can do. You can reproject on export, saves you having to transform the data when you get it local. And you can write the data out in a number of different formats. So we support the Esri formats, shapefile, file geodatabase. We've just added GeoParquet. We use a lot of geo packages, but you could also grab mapinfo, KML, DWG, PDF. A lot of our users simply want to publish large geotiffs and grab them out as DWG, for instance. Before you do your export, we do remind you that there are services associated with this layer. You can grab yourself an API key and grab the URL and interact with the data that way. But if you absolutely want to be doing an export, what we do is we crop to the extent of the viewer window on the assumption that you're looking at your area of interest. You can adjust this crop, and as you do so, we'll tell you how big your download's about to be. So say you just wanted the manga, you can come in here and say create export. In the background, we are going to be writing out a data set for you to download. Once it's prepared, you'll get given a link like this one. Hit the link, and that data set has now been downloaded. So I have the suburbs and localities sitting there as a geo package in the CRS that I prescribed. So that's how you'd get the data in the actual physical hands of the end user. If I go back to data, you can close this map down. It will reside down on your map bar. You can come back and look at it at any time. And if the publisher's updated anything, then you'll benefit from the latest version of the data. The main thing I wanted to show you in this before we jump over to this Horizon site is on the left here, we have a bunch of filters. Every data set that you load, we geotag. You can therefore say, just show me what you've got in Africa, Australia, wherever the data sets are that you have loaded. You can also assign a category. These are defined by the publisher, and it just helps grouping your data together. Under data types, this is the one I was primarily interested in. So GIS data types that we support, vector data. The way it works under the hood is you load your data in. You can load map info tabs. You can load CSVs. You can load shapefiles. You can load a bunch of different formats, most of the ones that I've referenced on export, and then we store it in one common area, and then we do the reprojecting and the reformatting on export. For point clouds, we support LAS and LAS. When you do an upload of a LAS file, which is probably the best one to do because LAS is going to be much bigger, we then store that as COPSI. We keep the raw file. When you do your export and when you view the point cloud in the map viewer, we're actually streaming COPSI. You can also stream that to any other end user that is capable of receiving a COPSI stream. Under rasters, usual suspects, imagery, bunch of different types of imagery, and we also do grids. So for grids, think DSM, DTM, DEM. You can style that accordingly, add that to the map, and then do exports in the same way that I was doing earlier. So those are your geospatial, and we also do 3D tiles, which I think I've got one, and that's viewable in the map viewer as well, and streamed. We also support tables, think spreadsheets, sets as we group a bunch of data together just to make it easier for your end user to find it. Repositories, these are Git repositories. Again, not going to go into that, but think GitHub and Git. Under documents, documents is a catch-all data type for anything that we don't natively support. And when I say natively support, I mean once you have stored it on the platform, it's viewable in the map viewer and you can export it. So if there was a data type that we didn't support and you still wanted to distribute that, an example of that would be, say, E57, you can load that as a document and users can download it directly from here. Catalog items, I don't think I've got any of those configured, but that's where you're referencing a third-party web service. And then map viewers, I'll go into a wee bit later, but what they essentially are, if you're an Esri person, then think web map. You basically put a bunch of data into a map viewer, save that configuration, and then you get given a persistent URL that you can send to your customers. It means that they don't have to know much, if anything, about coordinates, and they'll simply receive your map viewer. They can interact with it in the fashions that I was earlier, or they can do the export, or they can set up an API connection to it. But I'll cover that off a little bit later. So now we can leave this site and head on over to Horizon. This is, again, a demo site, but the idea being just to show you some of the capabilities that are available through the portal. So I've got a couple of data sets here. I should mention the way we do permissions is via this group mechanism. So I've set up a few groups, assigned them data. If I came to the site and I was in, say, the go-kart group, these are the only data sets that I would be able to see. So your data is protected by group. If you wanted to create, say, projects groups, then it's going to make sure that people in other projects can't see your data. So Mr. Go-Kart guy comes to the site, he finds the data sets. From here, you can go, all right, let's add that to the map. All of these are full data cards, which would be populated by any information that you wanted to make available. I can add that to the map as well. And let's chuck a DEM in there as well. Once you've got all of that sitting over here in your map viewer, I can give it a name. Let's call it go-kart. I can change the order to something that makes a bit more sense, maybe move them down a little. At any given time, I can do things like open up this ellipsis and toggle the visibility, just if you want to be able to see through it, give it some transparency. You can also say, let's just blank that out altogether. So bearing in mind you're an end user, you've been sent this URL, you can do whatever you like in here. So you've got all of the same things. You can open up the data table, you can open up the info tab, go back and check things, look at the service and APIs. So say I've built this, I want to share it. I'm going to make it 3D because 3D is just always more fun. So I come up here and I click share. I'm going to share this map viewer privately with an owning group of go-kart and hit share. So now I can grab a copy of that URL. I can close this. If I head back over to my data browser, I can in fact close down these guys because they have been persisted under the data type map viewer. And I can regenerate or rehydrate that at any time. And I can add more data to it. That URL that I'd taken a copy of, I can send off to my customer. They receive the URL and this map viewer will open for them shortly. Cool. So I'm an end user. I've been sent this URL. Here is all the data that I wanted. I can either view it in here, come in quite close, check out all the bits and pieces, or I can come over to the download button and do my download. Again, vectors, I can rewrite to whatever format I want. Raster, I can rewrite that. So GeoJPEG is going to be a whole lot smaller than a GeoTIFF, but you've got options, other formats that you can pull it out as. DWG is quite a common maneuver. People want to grab that out as a CAD file or get one of these other formats. And I can also reformat my grid to whatever I want. And then once I have that and I've set my crop accordingly, it's simply a matter of create export. So that guy will tick away. I actually will get an email when it's ready to download. So I don't need to wait here. I can go away. That's just going to tick away. And once it's available, I get a zip file with all of those 3 data sets in there. Download and happy days. Go and do my GIS stuff. So one of the other things that I wanted to show you today was our new point cloud visualization tools. We've done quite a lot of work. We've been supporting Point Cloud for quite a long time now. I think on the Lens site, you can still only see a vector representation of it. But what we have been working on is, if I add this Mount Maunganui to the map, that is a 2D view, so looking down on the point cloud. I can do things in here like we've added in some measuring tools, so you can do your measurement type things. We've also got this PDF, so you can create a quick PDF of the map. You'll get a view of the map exactly as you're looking at. You might just want to send a PDF off. You don't want to send a URL off. That gives you that option. I can save this configuration and share it, make a new map viewer. But what we're looking at is point cloud viz. Generally, point clouds are better in 3D. So let's cruise on into the mount. Now that I've got it in 3D mode, I can do all of that kind of tilting stuff. What we have done is we've extracted the classification as it exists within the LAS file and colored it according to what we determined to be somewhat standard. I don't think there is a standard, to be honest, but we've looked at like the most common colorization for all the different classifications. Under these classifications, I can do stuff like turn ground off, turn ground on. So you might want to only look at one classification. You can turn off whatever you're not interested in. But when we first released it, we got a number of requests for the ability to classify the point cloud according to your own classification requirements. And so we've added this appearance modal. That opens up this guy over here. Shows the default classification. And here I can jump in here and say ground, I'd rather it was this color, although that's not very nice, but in any case. So I can set that up. What that is doing is it is reconfiguring the classification as it is represented in this map viewer. So we're not actually fiddling the data at all, we're just fiddling the way that it is drawn on the screen. If I jump back into here, we've got three options. We also can do RGB. We didn't have enough room on the screen, and do we do intensity or RGB? We went with intensity, but we've since had quite a lot of feedback that RGB would be handy, so we'll be adding that back in. Essentially, the intensity is the intensity of the pulse that's been received. I can do stuff like change the color ramp according, just so you can basically play with the look and feel of the data according to the story that you want to tell. If I jump into elevation, this is the elevation, as that would tend to indicate. I quite like the spectral. I think it does a good job of telling a story. The other thing we've done is when the COPSI gets created, we've written into the metadata where the upper and lower quartile are of the majority of the points. So this particular data set, if I drag this down, it in fact has data at -30 meters. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense for visualization. That's why we have sort of automatically cut it off at ground level. And by the same token, there are some high points. Does make some sense. So what you can do in here is you can adjust the area that you want to display, and it will reallocate the color ramp according to whichever area you're looking at. So if you were more interested in the down low, you can take it down low. If you're more interested in the up high, you can take it up high. Depends whatever you want it to do, really. But so once I have set that up, and I want to leave that like, say, there. Okay. So I can now share this. Let's share it. I'll just call it the amount. And I'm going to say share. I'm going to share it privately with anybody in my go-kart group and hit share. So just to prove that I'm not lying, that URL now, if I send that off to somebody, they receive it and it will have the same classification spectral intensity that I had determined. They can still come in here and go, all right, I want to download some of that. It's going to be kind of large. They might have only wanted, say, the mount itself. So if I zoom in there, that's going to chop out the mount. It's made a much smaller export. I can play with the horizontal and vertical, and I can also reformat my output into LAS or LAS. Makes quite a lot of sense for point cloud. These three here are mainly so you can get a copy of the point cloud and plug it into your GIS, and then you can also get a recap or a DWG. So there's quite a few options on how you write that data set out. I won't bother doing that. Cool. So I'm not going to do much in the way of doing today. I just wanted to show you some stuff from the back end, just to give you an idea of how you'd go about loading these data sets in. First thing you want to do is come into groups. This is where you'd set up your group. So there's my go-kart group. I can add users to it. That user will need to have registered with your site to appear in this list, but essentially add users to the group. Once you have, and on the user front, if I go into users, if you want to onboard people, it's simply send them an email, decide whether they're an admin or not, add them to the group, hit send, they'll get an email. They then have to set up their identity. They're now registered with your site, and they will be by default added to the group that you have added to here, or you can come back and add them to one later. Once you've got your users and groups set up, you can head on into manage. This is a list of all the data sets that I have configured on my site. So this is the sitemap one that I was just playing with. This is where you can set up your description, attachments. You can upload a file that will be attached to the downloaded zip. You can determine the category. You can set a license, primary key. You're going to want to set that if it's a layer that you're updating quite frequently. Under access, this is where you can say stuff like, I want this data set to be completely public. Therefore, come over here. If I take the bottom option, that data set is fully public. If I want it to be just site user, so anyone registered with my site, here I can do that, and I can decide how much power they have. Can they just view it in platform? We also have facilities for can find, which means you can discover the existence but can't interact with the data set. There's a request access button, much the same as you would do on LINS, I believe, with the ownership data. And an admin will get that email and sign it off if they want, and then you've now got access to it. And also, this is where you can add groups. So I could say people in my late Rotoiti group can also have access, and I can determine how much accessibility they have. Can they find, can they view, can they download? If they want to have, if you want them to have API access, you need to set download. You can also give them the right to administer, which means they can push data up or do updates to your data set. So let's say you do permissions. Now, finally, how do you actually get your data onto the site? There's a few ways to do that. Easiest way will be, I want to do an upload. I'm going to grab my geo package with the site. As I mentioned earlier, it could be a file geodatabase, shapefile, any of those different formats. Hit open. This is the group that owns the layer, and then hit upload. So it's going to be the same process for loading any of the different data types. If you wanted to do a big ortho mosaic, we suggest that you put it in a zip file. That makes it a much easier scan for us. With these vectors, we're scanning it to make sure that all of the features are OGC compliant. Once you get to this point, I found my layer, I want to import it. It's exactly the same flow for all the different data types. And so I've mentioned it already, but yeah, come through, set all this stuff at a bare minimum, give it a name. I'll just call it demo, and we hit import. So that is now importing. It won't take that long, but I'm not going to wait for it. It's a tiny data set, but essentially it sits here ticking away. Once that hits 100, it will appear under my data browser, and we are all good. It will then appear over here. You can do stuff in here like sort by recently updated, sort by recently added, and it's an easy way to find whatever it is that you were just working on. So it hasn't come through yet. It will come through in the next couple of minutes. The last thing that I wanted to cover off was this other functionality that we've just added to the map viewer, which is kind of interesting. It is, I'll just grab a link, this button here. So let's get out of here. So this is where you can add a service or API endpoint to your map. For instance, we support proto maps, Mapbox vector tiles, WMTS, COPSI, 3D tiles, and then IFC is on its way as is CartDiff. So I have a URL for a WMTS. It's coming out of Europe, I think, in Austria. It's just an open data set sitting on someone's server somewhere. And I can say, I want to add this to my map viewer. Great, add it. There it is there. So that is going to be the top layer. Where this gets kind of interesting is this particular WMTS has multiple layers in it. So I can turn on various other layers. And if I get rid of that and then grab this other guy here, I've got a 3D tile streaming service that I want to access. It is in Nordirland, wherever that is. So here we have a 3D tile set, which we also support in platform. So some of our users are already uploading these. They're kind of interesting. It's a 3D tile set. So if I now share this and I had a bunch of other layers in it, that will persist as well. So it's a method for adding third-party services to the map viewer, and it just allows us, it's the only example that we have at Coordinates where the data is not actually cached on our servers. We're reading it entirely from the third-party service. So just thought I'd mention that. Another quite an interesting feature, 230, that's probably long enough. So I'll park it there and pass it back to Anne.
Oh, thanks, Eli. That was awesome. We have one question today. We have two. The first one is it interactive? I want a customer to select a few SA2 polygons and get that selection as a list on my site. I thought that would be the I button. Is that?
Yeah, so I think what you're saying there is that you want to be able to view the same you want the customer to be able to specify which polygons they're looking at and see them coming up. That actually is a feature that's on our roadmap at the moment. We're looking at the ability to annotate maps, and another direction that that's also going to go into is in browser editing. So two things there. One of them is the ability to comment on data for, say, the QA process, and the other would be I want to actually be able to add features, update statuses, stuff like that. And then another question, if I want.
The second one is if I want to tile a LAS data set, do I do this before uploading?
Yes, we will. Yes, short answer, yes. Same with ortho mosaics. We'll honor whatever you've set up as your tile sequence there.
Cool. The next one is, will this recording be shared? It will. So we'll send it out to everybody who not attended, but who registered. So even if people couldn't make it today, they'll get a copy.
So, and then David's question about how do I share data with a client? If you become a pro user, your data will be available through coordinates.com. So you can share data with a client in that regard. The big caveat is that you will also be sharing that data with anyone else that's got access to coordinates.com. So if you wanted to be sharing the data privately, i.e. in a secure fashion, you would want to be looking at a business plan. That is how you can set up groups and basically stop the whole planet from getting at your data.
Yeah, so that David's question there was about becoming a pro user. So a pro user is low cost and is public data. It's so that students or academics or professionals who wanted to promote a data set could load up one thing and it's on coordinates.com. Our business plans come with a site, and that's where you can lock it down to just your teams.
And the recording will be shared.
I've got one more. As stormwater and flood modelers, we currently rely on LINS, DEM, GeoTIFFs for use in HEC, HMS, and HEC RAS. Can coordinates add value to our current workflow? That sounds like a really good question to have as a call that we can do specifically for your business, because then we could talk about your workflow.
One
Yeah.
thing I will mention about that though is that because Coordinates does all the LIN stuff as well. If you have your own site, you can actually pin data sets from LINs directly to your site. So say if there was a DEM that you wanted to use a lot, it would mean you didn't have to download it and upload it to your site. You can reference it directly from LINs, but from within your portal. So that could be of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Oh, we've got one more. Are there ways to add a symbology legend to the maps at the moment? So to visualize categorical polygon classifications buckets versus value ranges, for example.
Yeah, we use Cardo CSS to do the styling at the moment. We're actually going through a potential rebuild of that to do more of kind of that appearance modal that I was showing you with for the LAS file. So it would mean that you can currently do whatever you do in Cardo CSS. You can do thematics, you can do labeling, and then that gets stored as a tile set against the data set, and your users can actually toggle through the different styles if they're connecting by WMTS or in the map as well. So yep, you can do it. We're looking at making that much easier so you don't have to actually write like, codey looking stuff to do it.
Our next one is, what is the advantage of tiling data for upload?
I guess it just allows you to determine what the tile scheme is. You do not have to, but you can. And yeah, and again, put it in a zip file. It will be much more efficient for, otherwise we've got to scan millions and millions of records and it's just slower.
Yeah, cool. Oh, well, thanks everyone for your questions. Um, if you're interested in how coordinates could work for your business, please get in touch and we can always do a demo and discuss your specific workflows and how we could add value. And for product updates, webinar announcements, we do publish a lot of content on LinkedIn, so please do follow us there. And we hope to see you all next time. So have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and thanks for spending your Friday afternoon with us.